Hey, Mortgage Coach community, this is Dave Savage, and I am here with one of the nation's top bloggers, authors, Chris. And Chris, I always have a challenge pronouncing your last name right. Probably should have made sure I got it right before we started this. But
No, I have a challenge myself. I pronounce it Gillebo, but I never correct anyone. So we'll go with whatever you want.
well, say it one more time just so I get it right.
Gillebo.
GUILLEBEAU. All right, Chris. So I came across Chris's content, and really, I consider Chris a new media leader because to say he's an author, I don't really think covers it. To say he's a blogger doesn't really cover it. I mean, you are a new media mogul, and the way that you are approaching bringing your ideas, your vision to the market. For most of you on the mortgage industry, you're over 50 and you probably don't know Chris, because his content and who he communicates with is a little different audience than a typical mortgage professional. But I think both real estate and mortgage professionals, first of all, we need to have a younger mindset, and we need to be looking at what the new generation is doing. And then I just think your whole message around nonconformity, around being your best, around having a quest and traveling, I just think it's great for our industry. So, Chris, thanks for making time to be here. And
Awesome. I'm excited.
yeah, look forward to having the conversation. So if you don't mind, you could probably tell your story a little better than I can. Just give everybody a kind of a feel with who you are and what some of your current focus is.
Okay, great. Well, I do a few different things, as you alluded to. I'm a writer, traveler, and entrepreneur. I've been starting businesses and more or less self-employed throughout my entire adult life since about age 19 or so. And over the past 10 and a half years, I've been on a quest to visit every country in the world. And I spent about 4 years living in West Africa and Sierra Leone and Liberia as an aid worker. I really loved travel. I loved exploring and making discoveries and everything associated with being in different places and kind of challenging myself. So after those 4 years were up, I just kind of kept going. And I had this life of independence and freedom that I had created for myself, and so I set this goal of going to every country. And at a certain point, maybe it was about 70 countries in. There are 193 countries in the world, and so about 70 countries in, I decided to start writing about it. It wasn't a business project in the beginning. It was just, I'm just going to write a little blog. I'm going to share some stories about going everywhere. And I really kind of, delved into that. I really liked the format of blogging, and started connecting with great people all over the world who were also doing interesting things, whether in entrepreneurship or in the arts or in something totally different. And so I just tried to kind of focus much more on them. I wrote my first book a few years ago, and then the second book was called The $100 Startup, which did pretty well. I went on a worldwide tour for that. Last year, I finished going to every country in the world and published a new book called The Happiness of Pursuit. We produce events in Portland, Oregon, my hometown, the World Domination Summit, Pioneer Nation, and some other things. And then I just travel, write, and connect with a great community. So that's probably the most important thing. The last thing is I really feel fortunate to connect with a great community of all kinds of people all over the world. And they're actually not all young people. I call them young people of all ages because it really is quite diverse, and the demographic is not a traditional demographic. It really is, people who are just starting out, as well as older people who are kind of reinventing themselves, or I have a lot of second act folks who are doing something different. So I think of them more as a psychographic, people who are pro-change, people interested in unconventional living or entrepreneurship in some fashion, broadly speaking. I think of them more in that way in terms than I do a traditional demographic.
I like it. And I know when you and I had a coffee meetup a few months back, I asked you about millennials, and you just kind of looked at me like, what's that? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I really
Uh,
don't know. I mean, actually, I'm so technically I'm not a millennial myself. I'm 36, and I believe the cutoff is a couple of years younger or something. But yeah, I don't really think of people in these traditional kind of age groups because there's so much diversity even within that. As you know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I'm looking forward to bringing that out in this conversation. Real quick, because we do a lot of events in our industry, and I want folks to have a feel for your event. How many folks attend your event, and just give us a little feel for what it's all about?
Yeah, so WDS this year, I think we had about 2,800 or so folks at the main event, and then we also have lots of some smaller events and things surrounding it. So it's probably about 5,000 or 6,000 people that are associated with it. And yeah, you just showed a fun little image of our closing party, which we always try to do some really big and epic stuff for. But it's not like a rave, I mean, that's the closing party. We also have lots of stuff happening in the Schnitzer Theater, which is Portland's largest independent theater. We set a world record together every year. This year, the record was for the most people performing consecutive yoga poses in Pioneer Courthouse Square, right in the downtown area of Portland. So we try to connect all these like-minded people and to help people find resources and tools for whatever it is that they want to do, whether it's to travel, whether it's to start a business, whether it's just to kind of find their own path, whatever that should be.
Well, again, one thing for sure, you've accomplished a lot in a pretty short period of time. When you think of, the success that you're at right now and the number of people that are part of your community that come to your events, I mean, this didn't happen overnight, but it also hasn't taken you like over a decade. How long has it been from the time that you really, let's just say, found your way to the point you're at right now? How many years would you
Yeah,
say
that's a good
from that
question. I
start?
mean, yeah, it's a good question because obviously it depends on like where you start, and all of us go through lots of life experiences and learning experiences that lead us to the current incarnation of whatever we're doing. But maybe a more straightforward answer is I would say five years, 5 to 6 years. I've been working on this full time, and I feel like I still have a long way to go. I feel like there's a lot of ways that I don't serve this community very well, and I'm still kind of learning how to relate to them and connect to them. But I'm pretty committed to it. I have no plans to stop.
Okay, so I guess one message of inspiration. I mean, we're talking to a guy who's literally at the top of his field, and it's a field that he's really invented. I mean, a space of non-conforming living create an amazing blog. How many folks pay attention to your blog on a weekly or monthly or
Yeah,
however you
I
measure
mean,
it?
like it's one of those things. Like, how do you count them? Same kind of thing. Like, in some ways, people are like, "Oh, there's hundreds of thousands of people," but then, like, are they really like connected? I mean, the email subscribers are about 80,000, so I would say there's between 50 and 100,000 people who are somewhat active.
Okay, so a huge platform. So kind of bringing this down to everybody who's either a realtor that's listening to this, or you're a mortgage professional and you're listening to this. Your goals are, how do you become someone special in the community that you serve?
Hmm.
How do
Yeah.
you become that go-to mortgage professional, that go-to loan officer, and your community might be 500 people, your community might be 1,000 people, might be a couple thousand, but how can you be a community leader in the local markets that you serve?
Hmm.
I bring that to, I think we can learn from you, Chris, on how you've done that. And the other thing I want to make sure we cover today is, not everybody on this call, while we like to live vicariously through you and travel the world, I think that's pretty cool, but we're not all going to get on a plane. Some of us we made that decision that we're living where we
Sure.
live.
Of
Yes,
course.
we want to travel more, but how can we create a quest in our own local markets? How can
Yeah.
we live a more adventurous life and not have to travel around the country?
Okay,
So
so to me, like where you kind of ended is where I would start is how do we live a more adventurous life? Or let's not even say that because that might throw some people off. Like, how do we live a truly meaningful life, And to me, that's connected to service. So you're like, okay, I don't have 80,000 people, but maybe I've got this, 500 people, or maybe it's 50. I mean, I got to wherever I am now, and like I said, I feel like I still have a long way to go. But however, wherever I am now, I came to it, through a perspective of trying to provide solutions for people, trying to meet needs for people. Like I started by just writing about my own little trips around the world, and some people thought that was fun and cool or whatever, but other people, rightly asked the question, well, that's great for you, but how does that help me? So I think it's tremendously important, whatever the size of that community is. I started with 5 people reading my blog, and one of them was my grandma. You know, Whatever the size, and then I actually found out that grandma had 2 email addresses. So actually, she was not only 20% of the audience, but 40%. But anyway, the point is like, figuring out, okay, how can I help this community? What can I do for them? And we figure that out through listening, right? We figure that out by like, really trying to hone in and say, okay, great entrepreneurs solve problems, and they're not always innovating, in my opinion. Like, I feel like people are always looking for, like, I'm creating this innovative new solution. Well, if you can make the next iPhone, that's great. But if not, there's probably a way that you can help people and serve people and meet their needs. And so if you do that on a small scale and you're able to replicate it, and then it's able to get bigger, that ultimately is the answer. And that's going to be the same whether you're a mortgage lender or whether you're a blogger or anything else, right?
Absolutely. So give us a feel, because you have built. I mean, it's a incredible blog. I mean, and by the way, I don't think a blog does it right. I mean, It's an online presence that's providing dynamic content. Uh, and obviously mortgage professionals and folks cannot do something at your scope, but they could do something better than what they're doing today.
Yeah, of
Give,
course.
give us a feel for, the kind of resources you put into just having the online presence that you have. How big is your development team or the contractors you use? I have a
Yeah,
feeling it's going to be less than I think, and it's going to be
sure.
inspiring.
Yeah, there's a lot of great people that I'm fortunate to work with, but there really isn't like a full-time team behind anything that I do. I do have one full-time assistant now, and she's great. But otherwise, it is just contractors. I mean, I have a great design studio that I work with now. Excuse me, as a developer who works on stuff, but he's a contractor. He's doing lots of other stuff. So it pretty much is, for the most part, kind of an army of one, that put this together. But like I said, I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and so let's relate it to your audience here. If you're just getting started, well, when I was just getting started, I didn't have a lot of money to invest in a website. I didn't know a lot about all these tools or whatever. First website I built, I think I invested like $1,000 or something in the design. Like I didn't want to do it for $100 or something, but I wanted to spend a little bit, but I didn't have a lot of money. So I tried to focus much more on content and on the message and on saying, okay, I'm going to try to craft, because that's free, right? That's just, from yourself. I tried to focus on what is this message? How can I like put something forward that's interesting and, informative and hopefully maybe educational as well for the right audience. So anybody can think through those things, right?
Absolutely. And folks, one of the reasons why I decided to do this without PowerPoints, I don't use PowerPoints, I use keynotes. But one of the reasons why I didn't use a keynote is because this guy's online presence is amazing. I mean, really, go to Google, put in his name, check out his what he has created from a content perspective. Check out some of the videos on his event. I see so many loan officers and realtors, by the way, not just spending a few grand. I mean, spending a lot of money.
Right.
And again, no insult to any one person on this call, but I see a lot of either people that have no online presence or they have bad online presences.
Mm.
And so I just hope one thing everybody gets who listens to this call is, this guy's a team of one, just
Mhm.
being smart, being intentional, being quality focused, and he's got just an incredible online presence. You can do better than whatever you're at today. Uh,
Mhm. Great.
any comments on that, my man?
No, that's great. I agree. I mean, obviously, like we all want to improve ourselves. We start with where we are, and then you build from there. I feel like you invest in success, right? Like, I don't mean to sound like a motivational speaker, but if something is working, then that's when you kind of devote more resources toward it. So you're like, now my website does cost a lot more money to maintain, but that's because like it's this community, it's this business. There are a lot of people that care about it. In the beginning, it was like $7 a month for my web host account, so that's easy.
Yeah. So another thought. Let's talk about. I do believe that our industry is the majority over 50,
Hmm.
and we know that where the market to be served is, over the next 5 years, 70% of home buyers are going to be millennials, and even
Mm.
over the next year, it's a big growing audience. So as an industry, we need to attract more millennials and millennial thinking like people into our space.
Mm.
And so one belief I have, Chris, is that the folks that think like this and the younger generation, they really want to work for more than a job. They want to work for a purpose, for a
Absolutely.
mission, and for a values-based organization. So
Mm.
the more we can turn our mortgage companies, our real estate practices into something that's mission-oriented and more purpose-oriented, the
Hmm.
more we're going to be attracted. I mean, I think everybody knows that intellectually, so it's not like, whoa,
Right.
we just heard something for the first time. But what are some thoughts in just your journey? Some businesses that are, they're the mainstream. They are real estate, mortgage, call them boring type companies that have been mission oriented. Any guidance, wisdom, or examples that you have for everybody on this call that is in that space?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we could say about this. I'm a big fan of boring businesses. I feel like boring businesses that are actually like meeting people's needs, that's actually kind of exciting. And even if it's not exciting, it's certainly successful and it's valuable. And so to me, when I think about like, okay, we're relating to a different generation, things are changing. Most people who are serving in this space are 50 and older, whereas as you said, like most buyers coming into the space are much younger. Again, I'm not a generational expert by any means, but to me, when I think about this gap, to me it has very little to do with age. I don't think the answer is so much like let's try to find a way to relate to the young generation or something like that. To me seems kind of strange. It's like I read Money Magazine, and Money Magazine's always kind of annoys me because they're kind of catering to this certain demographic, and they're talking about essentially how to compete in a new world, but they're doing it in kind of a pandering, condescending manner. And so I think that's like the wrong approach. To me, the right approach is exactly what you're doing. You're talking about a values-based organization. You're understanding not so much a millennial culture, but I would say the business of lending and the business of housing in general is changing. And so who is best attuned to be aware of that? It's people who have been in the industry for a while. So it's not so much about changing to adapt to a different generation, but can you adapt to how housing is different, how lending is different, and then then you're in a better place to translate those to anybody else. I mean, because ultimately what you have to do is where we started. Like, you have to be helpful, you have to provide a solution, you have to do something that has value, and if you can do that, that to me is more important, I think, than trying to co-opt or adapt or something a different kind of culture. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And first of all, let's be real clear. Our industry is everything but boring. I mean, we are providing the
Great.
American dream. If you're a realtor, you're delivering
Yep.
the lifestyle side. And if you're a mortgage
Absolutely.
professional, you're funding the American dream.
Right.
Now, I do think we as an industry could use technology a little better.
Mm.
Uh,
True.
so the way you have used internet and technology is, I think, best of breed. And I think we can all do better with how we leverage mobile.
Mm.
Let's do this. We've only got a few more minutes because I know you're on you're doing a lot of interviews right now, and I wanted to keep this first call together pretty tight. Let's do a little bit around how you do your annual review and how
Sure.
you set your annual goals. Because I think one, it's unique, and two, there's just a lot of content on your website around it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody, whether you're a real estate agent or mortgage professional, you can really benefit from how Chris goes about his annual review. And I think it would all be a great place to start reading and learning more about Chris.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So probably about 7 years ago, I started this process of going away at the end of the year. I usually do it at the end of December, but of course, whenever you're listening to this, you can still do it. And just kind of reflected back on the previous year and thought about some things that went well as some stuff that didn't go well. And then I go into this whole goal setting exercise, which, as you mentioned, Dave, is on the website and people can check out. It's all free. I kind of like look ahead to the next year and say, okay, what do I want my life to look like? And then I look at all aspects of my life. I look at personal stuff, I look at health and fitness and relationships and wellness and finances, but also a lot of career stuff. Like, what do I hope to achieve? And then I kind of set these goals according to a number of different categories. And I have a whole spreadsheet template that people can download. And since I've been doing this, it's probably the number one thing that's really, really helped kind of keep me on track and ensure that one, I'm meeting like big goals because I've always been kind of goal oriented. But then, two, that means I'm actually doing the things that I say that I value as opposed to getting sidetracked because I do have a lot of different projects. I'm working on a lot of different stuff. And this is just something that has helped me. Here you can see the template there, and you can download this. And I also invite my readers to participate. It's always kind of fun to see what they come up with. And then I refer back to the annual review like a few times during the year. Every quarter or so, I'll kind of look back and say, okay, how are we doing with this? You can see some comments from the community. So I think this is helpful regardless of your field.
Yeah, I would say so, my friend. I love what you're doing. So mortgage coach professionals. Again, we're real serious about education. You can go if you are new to the mortgage coach community. Go to our video website. I haven't figured out exactly where I'm going to tag this and add your video yet, but I
Cool.
know just last week I interviewed Daniel Harkavy, one of
Mm-hmm.
the top life planners. He's actually a Portland local. I don't know if you know
Oh, great.
Daniel with Building Champions by any chance.
I'm not sure I do.
You should. I mean, he's actually. I noticed you are having Michael Hyatt,
That's
and
right.
Daniel was actually Michael's coach for many years, and they're
Oh, great.
actually co-authoring a book right now that's going to come out next year.
That's
Uh,
fun.
but make sure you check out this because this was a mortgage coach, someone in
Hmm.
the industry doing some coaching, and make sure you watch some of these videos to get more value from what we're doing. Make sure that you purchase one of Chris's book, whichever one you think really speaks to your heart. Get to know this guy because I have been tracking him. I get value from reading his content. Chris, last thought, and then we're going to wrap it up. The concept of having a quest and going on a
Hmm.
quest. Obviously, in your book, your quests are pretty big, and they require getting on airplanes most of the time. For folks on this call that travel around the world, is it going to be the quest? It's going to be a quest in their own backyard.
Oh,
Uh, what are some
so
ideas?
yeah, sure. No, that's great. Thanks for the for the new book, The Happiness of Pursuit. It's not just about my quest, fortunately. I didn't want to just write a travel memoir. So there's lots of other people undertaking big quests and big adventures, and there are some other travel folks, but there's also there's this great story about Sasha Martin, this young woman in Oklahoma who wasn't able to travel, but she had a daughter and she wanted to show her daughter the world. So she cooked a meal from every country in the world. And that
Nice.
was her quest. So there's academic stuff, there's humanitarian stuff, some business stuff. The whole goal is to show people how to cultivate adventure in their lives, regardless of their situation.
Love it, man. Well, hey, I love what you're doing. I feel like I've showed everybody how they can get in touch with you. Uh, just Google his name, and you don't need me to spell it. It's right in front of you. Chris,
Awesome.
I look forward to doing another call with you one of these.